Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I decided to do pink poinsettias for my card today. I was just in a pink mood. So I'm starting off with some Canson XL watercolor paper. I just had this big scrap of it sitting on top of the full pad of paper. So I pulled that out and as usual realized it was big enough that I might as well stamp some extra images and make more than one card at a time. So I'm using Simon Says Stamp, the Winter Flowers stamp set that I had raved about in a haul video a month ago, whenever it was. And I'm inking up the poinsettia with Simon Says clear ink, and I stamped it 4 times onto this watercolor paper with the clear ink that I had already treated with my anti-static powder tool. And then I'm coating everything with detail white embossing powder. And a lot of the images I was stamping and then coating with the powder. I wasn't heating it yet, but it just helps to see because when I, at least for me anyway, when I stamp clear ink on watercolor paper, I can't see it for the life of me. So I've had everything completely coated. I stamped the flowers, 4 of the flowers, 2 of the branches, and then I think 6 of the leaves. There's so many images in this set, but those are the ones I decided to go with. And then I heat up my heat tool, just let it run for 30 seconds or 30 seconds to a minute just to make sure it's good and hot first before bringing it to the paper and then melting all of that embossing powder. Once everything's melted, I decided today to use my Sakura Koi watercolors. Just thought I would do something different. I was going to do my Zig Clean colors and I thought my Mission Gold and I was like, ooh, I haven't used these in a while, so why not? So I just used these. I did nothing special. I basically am just painting on color. I didn't do anything fancy, any sort of watercolor techniques or anything. I did it messy too because I thought, why not? Plus, I'm planning on using the coordinating die set to die cut these, so I didn't really mind if I went outside the lines a little bit. You're not really going to be able to tell in the end. So I just painted it on. 2 of them I ended up doing darker, and then the other 2 I did lighter, a little bit more watered down, just so they didn't look all the same, and just kind of experimenting with how the color went on. With these watercolors, they don't really spread out a bit, so I find really the only way to really get the color on is just paint it on, like I said. So did that first with all the flowers, pretty much using just that one pink and just mixing it up on the palette that comes in this little watercolor set. And then mixed up a little bit of green and did the same thing. Just painted over the leaves and then the branches. And super, super simple. That's the one thing too I love about the set. And there's that spring flower set that's similar, that the way it's designed with just the way the lines go, you don't have to be, you don't have to stay inside the lines. You don't have to keep it perfect. It just makes it easy. And they're just so pretty. I just love the detail of this. So once it was done, I decided I wanted to try adding some shimmer with this Prima watercolor palette that I have shown many times that I use for the golds mostly to do splatter. But there's this kind of darker pink shimmery color in there. So I painted that on and I was like, on the lighter ones, I didn't like the harsh lines I had with it. I was like, I just did not like that at all. But what I ended up doing is I just watered it down a little bit more and blended it out a bit. So it's got just a really light shimmer. It's not in your face, but it does give it, and it gives it a little bit of definition too. So I thought it was just really pretty. And then of course, I still had to use the gold. I tried not to, I really did, but then I'm like, no, I need to add more. So I ended up mixing up the darker gold in this set, and I used that to paint in the centers of all the flowers. And then of course, because I can't leave well enough alone, I decided to mix some more up and I'm going to do some splattering with that. So I got everything out of the way, pulled out my splatter cubby here, and then just mixed up more of that gold on the edge of an acrylic block and then flicked my paintbrush against that just to create some splatter on here, just for a little something something. So did all that, and then I'm just going to set this aside to dry and work on my card bases, which is, Simon Says, they're cotton candy cardstock. So I had a full sheet here. And I put it in my paper trimmer and just scored down the middle at the 5.5 inch mark and then cut it at 4.25 inches. So these will be top folding A2 size cards. So I've got 2 of my card bases done at the same time. So use my Teflon bone folder to press down the folds of each one. And then I took some Post-it tape and I just applied it just past the score line here because I want to ink up the holiday background stamp set, and I'm inking up with the same color of ink. This is their cotton candy dye ink. So I'm inking up the background and I'm going to flip over that card front there. So I'm stamping right onto the front of the card. And I just had that Post-it tape in place just to make sure I didn't get any of the stamped ink onto what will be the back of the card. So just did that, and then I'm going to peel off that tape and apply it to the second card front, and then I won't even throw it away. I'm just going to stick it to the box that this roll of Post-it tape came in, because I can use this over and over again because there's basically nothing on it. So I did that, and then I did this off camera, but I made sure that this background that I had stamped was completely dry. Like I actually used my heat tool, completely dried it, and then I tested it out here by using my anti-static powder tool and then pouring embossing powder over it. Because this ink soaks into the cardstock, kind of blends in, it takes longer to dry than you would think. And I wanted to make sure that none of that background was picking up the embossing powder. So I made sure it was 100% dry. It was really liberal with my anti-static powder tool. And then I stamped the sentiment from the Christmas Essentials set with the clear ink. And then this time I coated it with Wow's Rich Pale Gold embossing powder because I love this. I was going to do it in white, but then I'm like, I really wanted to use the gold. So I did that to both cards, and then while I had all this out, I used my anti-static powder tool on the inside of the card, and then I just stamped another sentiment from this Christmas Essentials stamp set. So I did that to both. I just stamped it, coated it with the embossing powder, set it aside, stamped the second one, and once I had them both stamped, I can heat both of them up one after another and get everything melted and embossed. And that's all I did this time to the insides of these cards, since I'm kind of going a little all out, which you'll see by the end on both these cards. I decided to keep the inside simple with just the embossed sentiment and then plenty of space to write to the recipient. So once I'm done all of that stamping and embossing, I can funnel back all of that embossing powder back into the container and set that aside. And I decided to bring in more of that pink shimmer. So I got out my splatter cubby again, and then laid both of these cards down and then mixed up more of this pink shimmer onto an acrylic block. And I made sure to kind of mix it up kind of heavily. With these, you need to add the water, and the water needs to be, you either need to move it around or let it sit and like soak in. You can't just pick it up immediately. Just the nature of these types of like metallic watercolors. Any of the brands I've used are like this. So mixed it up really well with my brush, and then just pulled it off of the palette and onto an acrylic block, and then did the exact same thing. Flicked it against the edge of the acrylic block to create a splatter, and very liberally splattered both of these backgrounds with this watercolor. And then same thing, I'm going to set these aside, let them dry. So while those are drying, my original all the watercoloring and the splatter and everything is dry. So now I can run these through my Big Shot with the coordinating dies. And usually I'll tape the dies into place, but today they just, my magnetic platform was working. Sometimes I think because my cutting plates get a little too warped, it's hard for the magnetic platform to hold things into place, but it was working well today because my plate, I keep rotating it and you can see it's so cut up, but I'll keep using it until I finally can't use it basically anymore. But yeah, everything was holding in place, so I didn't need to use my Post-it tape. But I just ran the images through multiple times so that everything is die cut. So I have all my flowers, the branches, the leaves, everything's all nice and die cut, so I can set this aside. And then I just used foam tape to adhere all of these to my card front, just layered over the two flowers, and then ended up trimming down that branch a little bit so that it wasn't sticking out past the edges of the card. And then those I just adhered with my Tombow Mono Multi, just applied, a really thin amount onto the back of it. And then I put an acrylic block over that so that it could dry. And the leaves I adhered into place. And I was going to leave it here, but of course, you guys know me. If I was planning on making multiples of these or like mailing these out, I'm either going to put them in a bubble envelope, or if it's something you don't like dealing with, things that are two-dimensional and bubble envelopes and all that kind of stuff, you could adhere all of this flat to the card, like skip the foam tape and skip this next step. But of course, I just wanted to add the dimension and the shimmer and all that. So after everything was adhered, I pulled out some sequins from my stash. So I've got some pretty pink Posh sequins, and I had pink peonies, and then I think I had a couple of pink blush ones too, just some lighter pink. And then I pulled out these little things by Lucy's cards. These are the Bright Copper Kettle sequins. They just had a couple of the metallic ones that kind of went with the metallic embossing, plus a couple little stars are in that mix. So I pulled those out too, just to kind of pull in the Christmassy, just a little bit, since these are so pink. Anyway, if you've seen my Christmas tree that I post on my Instagram account, you guys know I love pink for Christmas. Anyway, adhered all these into place with some multi-matte medium adhesive from Ranger, and I just used my reverse tweezers to pick these up and stick them into place. And that finished off these cards. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog posts and links to all the supplies used. I'll have links to a couple more videos at the end. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate all the support, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye.